to say thank you for your many blessings. We thank you, Lord, for life, health, and strength, and we thank you, God, for the opportunity to come together. We ask now, Heavenly Father, that you'll just be with us and that you'll allow us and those who share with us to bring solutions to the issues that we are trying to resolve. We ask you to forgive us for our sins and anything, God, we have done or lacked to do that would have added more grace and more salvation to these efforts. We ask now that you bless all the panelists and those that will talk to us. Let us gain wisdom and understanding. And then, Lord, let us go forth and do that you've called and gifted us to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. And thank you so much for that, Pastor Sykes. I want to thank everyone for their willingness to participate in this extremely important community conversation. Tonight, we will hear many diverse opinions in our community. Many in our community will speak on what the quote unquote problems are or what the quote unquote solutions are. This evening, we will hear diverse and authentic community dialogue. And we will be charged with trusting the voice of the community as a collective to pour into the way forward. I do want to note that all of our esteemed hosts and panelists have each provided a bio. Although the bios are too lengthy to read on this particular platform, they will be included in the full report. I will provide a quick snippet as I introduce everyone for those who do not know the panelists so that you can, in fact, get a little bit of an insight of who they are. I do, before I begin, I want to give a special thank you to our honorary listening hosts and the visionaries behind the Enough is Enough call to action. I want to thank Council Member Fig Sanders and make mention that Council Member Fig Sanders holds the esteemed honor of being the first African American to represent District 5. Councilmember Fig Sanders, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I also want to welcome Councilmember Wheeler Bowman. Ms. Bowman, Councilmember Bowman holds the esteemed honor of being the first Black president of the Council of Neighborhood Associations in St. Petersburg, and this honor was bestowed on her in 2014. And thank you, Councilmember Wheeler Bowman, for joining us on this evening. You will notice, and I'm going to actually stop sharing at this point. You will notice that we have a healthy panelist board, but please note that this evening's conversation is not going to be our panelists speaking to you or at you. Our panelists are here to listen, they are here to offer guidance, and they're really just here to receive what you, the community, want to say, has to say, and what voice you want to be heard in. I don't know, I don't see that Senator Ruslan is on. However, I am sure that he is planning on joining us. In place of that, I'm going to move on to State Representative Michelle Rayner Goolsby. State Representative Rayner Goolsby is a practicing attorney with Denman, Perlman, and she founded the Civil Liberty Law, focusing on criminal defense and civil rights. And she provides pro bono legal services. Because of Representative Goolsby's stellar work on cases that rose to national prominence, including those of the Marquise McLaughlin and Yasmin James case that was one that we paid close attention to. Most recently, she also had a vested interest in Barbara Hinckley. Prior to opening her own firm, Michelle served as an assistant public defender for Hillsborough and Pinellas and Pasco counties, and legislative aide to former state senator Arthena Joyner. Please welcome State Representative Michelle Rayner Goolsby. Thank you so much for joining us. We have Pastor Lewis Murphy. Pastor Murphy has served as a senior pastor at Mount Zion Progressive Missionary Baptist Church for 21 years. In addition, Pastor Murphy is the visionary of the 7x7 movement, a collective of local pastors coming together to evangelize Pinellas County, caring for the spiritual, economical, and social health of our community. Pastor Murphy, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you.
We have Bishop Manuel Sykes. Bishop Sykes in 1993, became the pastor at Bethel Community Baptist Church. In January 2006, Bishop Sykes was named the president of the St. Petersburg Theological Seminary. He's also served as an adjunct professor of African American history and ethics at St. Petersburg Junior College. Bishop Sykes, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Next, we have Reverend Watson Haynes. Reverend Haynes is the president and CEO of the Pinellas County Urban League, and he has been that since 2012. He successfully manages the agency's long, short-range strategic planning, fiscal management, and fundraising activities. This agency, for those of us that knows the Urban League, serves as the change agent to address generational poverty with the major focus areas of economic development, housing, education, health, and advocacy. Reverend Haynes, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Next up, we have Attorney Tamara Felton Howard. Attorney Felton Howard is the managing member of Felton Howard Law, PLLC, a probate, business, and real estate development law firm located in our city. Tamara's community work has included an appointment by Governor Jeb Bush as a commissioner with the 6th Judicial Circuit Judicial Nominating Committee, serving on the boards of All Children's Hospital, the Boys and Girls Club, Royal Theater, the Pinellas Community Foundation, St. Petersburg Chamber of Sickle Cell Disease Association, and the Mount Zion Human Services, as well as the National Council of Negro Women in St. Petersburg. Attorney Felton Howard, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have Brother John Muhammad. Brother John is the co-founder of the St. Petersburg Stop the Violence Coalition in 2011. He currently serves as executive director of the Community Development and Training Center, which provides information and outreach to the community. Brother John, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And last but not least, we have Reno Moore. Reno Moore is a community organizer with a true, undaunting love for St. Petersburg. His mission is to awaken our people spiritually, as he feels that is where the need is the most. Reno, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I want to do a special note of mention to our discussants. We have Reverend Kenny Irby, Mr. Ray Tampa, Commissioner Ken Welch, Ms. Trina Cox, Mr. David Jackson, and just as an FYI, David Jackson is the business owner on 16th Street. The name of his business is Sons and Daughters of African Kings, LLC. He is very prevalent in the community where a lot of these acts have taken place. I want to thank each and every panelist. I want to thank our honorary listening hosts and the discussants, and I want to thank the community for joining us on this evening. I would like to start with this opening question, and please note, panelists, that each of you have 1 to 2 minutes to provide some insight on this particular question. And then I would like to open it up to the community who are actually listening in and also on this particular Zoom. Please feel free, as the community provides insight, to respond to them, be very engaged, be involved, because again, this is in fact a community conversation. Our question is, in 2020, there have been 15 homicides in St. Petersburg. What do you feel our collective community response should be? And I would like to start with Brother John Muhammad. Brother John, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's a part of this panel, everyone who's on here listening. I too intend on being more interested than interesting. And I'm happy to be here tonight. Now my 1 to 2 minutes can start, right?
Yes, sir.
I think that's a really big question because the question actually appeals to our hearts, not our heads or our hands. It's not what you think our collective response should be or what should we do collectively to respond. The question is, what do we feel our response should be? And so I have, you know, deep feelings about it because I've been directly impacted by it for several years in my family and in my extended family. And my feelings, we should march, we should protest, we should light candles, we should have vigils for those who have lost their lives. Like, I really feel that. I also feel that 50 shots during rush hour on a main thoroughfare was excessive. I felt chills run down my spine when I heard the young man scream, "That's my brother," as officers emptied their clips into his body. My feelings also tell me that we should reach out to families who are dealing with trauma, find out ways that we can help them process it, those who have lost loved ones physically, and also those who have loved ones who are in prison as a result of decisions that they made, understanding that they are connected to families and they have loved ones as well. I also feel as a father, like Marvin Gaye, when he said, "Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. War is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate." I feel that. I feel him when he says, "Don't punish me with brutality. Come and talk to me so you can see what's going on." Like, that's how I feel. And those are some of my initial feelings. But to feel also means that we have to be aware, and we become aware through touching and being touched. And to feel is also an act of touching something to examine it fully. So it's a sensory thing. It's something that, I think we have to include in our solutions, because a lot of times our solutions are based upon how things look or based upon what we're hearing people say. But if we don't have our hands on it and put our hands in that batter and truly feel what's in there and feel the composition of what's going on, then I think our response will miss the mark and we may not get the impact that we're having because we're not in touch with those who are living this on a daily basis. And lastly, I feel like our response has to be balanced between what we feel, what we think, and what we actually do. I'm honored again to be here to offer my lived experience and share some of the lessons that we've learned over the years in our efforts to address the issue. And again, I would like to encourage us to think critically, think deeply, and rise above our emotions as we discuss long-term and sustainable solutions to this pressing.
Thank you so much for that, Brother John. You were spot on time. Did you set your clock?
I should have. What did I win?
Nothing at all, sir. Oh. Nothing at all. But thank you for that. That was insightful and definitely one that a response that we need the community feedback on. So I appreciate that. I'd like to actually jump now to um, Attorney Felton Howard. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I got it.
Okay.
What do you feel our collective community response should be?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of the conversation. I'm proud to be here. I did have an opportunity to be a part of the group that was co-founded by Brother John Muhammad in 2011. And one thing that we were able to do was to bring some awareness to the issue. Although the violence stopped for a period of time, we didn't have a sustainable ceasing of the violence. And I think that's what we need. We need a concerted, strategic response by the community. And it needs to be, faith-based organizations, community, business leaders, medical community, the legal community. We just need to get everyone involved in tackling, this particular issue. In order to get measurable results, we have obviously a youth gang problem in this city. When I was growing up in St. Petersburg, I didn't know anybody in a gang. I didn't know any gangs. And now, I'm 52 years old and I can name 10 gangs in the city of St. Petersburg. And so I think that, gang members are 20 times more likely to commit homicide than any other at-risk youth. So we have to tackle that issue. We have to introduce some restorative justice practices where instead of youth going to jail, we can introduce them to career-based opportunities, and try to move them into a different direction. As African Americans, I think we also have to be active participants in the gun control conversation. There's a direct correlation between gun ownership and homicide rates, and guns are prevalent in our community. And so I think that we need to not sit on the sidelines, and we need to be active in that conversation, and also increase community interfaces with at-risk youth. We can't be afraid of our youth. We need to mentor them. We need to provide opportunities to them, and we need to talk to them to find out, what's really going on. And I think improving access to mental health services is imperative. A big part of what's going on. We have a lot of stress, a lot of trauma, and we have to address that issue. So that's my contribution.
Thank you so much, Attorney Felton. And again, you were spot on your time, so I do appreciate that. I would like to jump over to Pastor Murphy. Same question, providing your insight in regards to that question. Do you need me to repeat it?
No, not at all. Thank you so very much for inviting me, and good evening to all of the panelists and participants. We're certainly at a critical point that is well beyond time that we began to put a strategy in place that's going to address a lot of the systemic issues that impact not only our communities, but communities like ours across this nation. And just like there's generational wealth, there's generational poverty. And when we got to the place where we integrated and we moved away from our communities and was excited about being being able to go on the other side of the railroad track, if you will, we kind of neglected our community, and a lot of our brothers and sisters are falling through the cracks. One of the things that's noted is these homicides were between the ages of 18 to 34. Those are young people, very, very young people. So when we started putting a strategy together, we need to address those critical ages. First of all, 0 to 5, that early learning childhood, early learning portion, where kids, by the time they get to elementary school or first grade, kindergarten, you're trying to educate them. They're way, way behind. So you keep feeding that pipeline of where kids that feel like they don't have a place in society, in the school system. And when we start looking at the strategy, we got to look at it spiritually, socially, economically, and educationally. And then, because we got so many great organizations and great people in our community, but one of the things that really bothers me is that a lot of times we, instead of promoting and helping each other, a lot of times we tear down the other person, because if it's not our idea or we initiated it, then we poo-poo on it. So I think all that selfishness and stuff need to be set aside, and we need to really, really take a look at the issues and come up with a strategy, a plan to deal with it. And to Tamara Felton Howard point, mental illness is critical, and people are doing a lot to medicate that illness. So that plays a big role into it. But the key thing that I want to say is that we need to come together and put a strategy together to combat what's happening to our people in our community.
Thank you so much, Pastor Murphy. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that. I would like to jump now to State Representative Michelle Rayner. Michelle, if you can unmute yourself and provide a response to the same question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther. Thank you so much for hosting this and having this vital conversation. I could echo so many things the other panelists have said before me, but one of the things I've been able to sit down with some people that are actually on this call and just have like really intentional conversations. And a couple of things that I think are important is that when we're even looking at laws, looking at what is on currently existing on the books as it relates to gun control, gun violence, and even when we think about law enforcement and qualified immunity and looking at what happens with that. One of the bills I will be holding is the qualified immunity bill in the House. Also, I think removing barriers where they exist for our returning citizens and for folks in our community who can't get access to resources. So I think that we have to have a real honest conversation about what those barriers are, what we are able to do within government and outside of government. Because even if we can't get what we need from our government, there are so many people on this call that we as a collective should be able to come together. And then also to access the impact of what's in place and empower those who are doing great work on a smaller level. A lot of times we're looking for, kind of to Pastor Murphy's point, the face of the organization, the face of this. But there are so many people who are doing great work in our community, but they don't have the resources that they need. But then we're funding organizations that they can say that they've served. And Brother Don has made this point to me. They can say that they served 150 kids, but what is the what is the actual impact? Because there's a difference between service and there's a difference between impact. And then lastly, I think that when we think about the juvenile justice system, we need to look at actually how our kids are being served within the juvenile justice system. When they go in for 21 days, are they coming out with any type of, education, any type of plan moving forward? Or if they go into boot camps, are they coming out with any resources? So I think that it's a holistic approach. Intentional conversations are good, but I think that after that, we have to have some action items.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, State Representative Rayner. I appreciate that. I see that Senator Rouson was able to get on the call. Senator Rouson, the question that we are responding to in the space of 1.5 to 2 minutes is, in 2020, there have been 15 homicides in St. Petersburg. What do you feel our collective community response should be? And
thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for this invitation, and thank you very much for this opportunity to participate. I can, like State Representative Michelle Rayner said, I could echo the sentiments, the points that each of the speakers before me have said. What I'm hearing is, though, sustainability, inclusion, collaboration are key and very important. We need to continue supporting these marches. Like the late, great John Lewis said, when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to do something. And people who say they're tired of marching and singing songs, well, we're tired of funeralizing and singing songs. And so we need to keep community awareness going. And then, like others have said, attack it on the level of which you are. If you're on a state level, use state laws and state resources to bring back to this. If you're on a municipal level, use those resources. If you're on an individual level or you're entrusted with community leadership, use that. And then let me suggest something kind of novel. We have a movement in the city called Not My Son. I'd like to see that turned into Not My House. These 18-year-olds, like Reverend Murphy said, are carrying guns, and they're carrying the guns in these homes where they're sleeping and living. And we should be able to go into the room of anybody in our house and determine whether or not there's a gun in that place. Not my house. And let these young people know that we won't tolerate certain things, but we can divert energy. We can get them help. Mental health is very important, like Attorney Felton Howard indicated, and we're living through some tough times. So I think, one, we need to continue marching, supporting those who march. We need to say something when we see something, and we need to reach these kids where they are, on the street corners, if that's where they are, or in our houses, if that's where they are.
Thank you so much, Senator Rusan. I would like to jump over to Reno Moore and then Pastor Sykes and then Reverend Haynes. Reno, if you can, oh, good, you're unmuted. Do you need me to repeat the question, sir?
No, I do not.
All righty, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
All right, so peace and light, everyone, once again, and thank you for the opportunity to speak and address some of the continued issues that I like to reword and call opportunities these days, because I believe that to answer the question accurately, we need to be dealing with our mindsets as we approach different things. You know, our mindsets it drives our energy. You know what I mean? And I think it's a stage of acceptance that our people have to come to, and that's why that's why in the intro you was talking about me saying stuff about us spiritually, whether one of the real works and Pastor Sykes, I'm sorry, the other pastor had mentioned it earlier and stuff. Definitely have to be or work on our people spiritually. You know what I mean? So we can make sure that spiritually our energy goes back to our interest. And the problems in our streets, a lot of times we tend to come into situations like this and we start talking about the leaves on the trees as opposed to the roots. You see what I'm saying? And so I like to do what we call the root work in the community, which is going into our people's minds, you know what I mean, and having those real genuine conversations. Our people are currently praying over food that they know is killing them. You know what I'm saying? So I know something's not right in reality. And so when we get back to reality, we can start addressing our real issues. This crime that's going on right now in our community is, it's a low number with 15 homicides. You know what I mean? That's because half of the killers had to sit down during COVID. You know what I mean? But when we look at the people on the streets as our own children and remember that we was once them, we'll stop looking at them as problems. They're not aliens, right? They didn't just come out the sky. We created them. Humans learn from sight, and I love to tell that all the time because they watched us. We was the ones that was speeding through the neighborhoods in the 90s. Now the city put us speed humps. You see what I'm saying? So we can't continue to put Band-Aids on real issues. And our issues start in our minds. You see what I'm saying? Our attitude drives our behavior. A lot of people say that. You know what I mean? So our attitude towards one another is being propaganda, and we believe in it. And once we start believing that we the problem, we start treating each other like we're a problem. We start putting on our, you know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of work to be done. I love the Voltron approach that I'm being a part of right now. I say Voltron, I grew up in the 80s, y'all watching those cartoons. And so those were very powerful lions, and they had weapons all on them that can fight small battles. But when that object came from outer space that was bigger than them, they came together. You see what I'm saying? And so I love the Voltron energy. I looked at the end game in 2008 when I started my journey, and I seen that regardless of what we chose to be, we had to put what we chose to be to the side and stand together and work together. And so I love to be a part of it. As I took that picture last year with Pastor Murphy and Brother Muhammad, because I seen that we as people chose to take journeys spiritually, and that's okay. You see what I'm saying? But to fix our problem here locally and globally, for us here right now, and for our bloodline here 100 years from now, we have to come together, and I love to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bishop Sykes?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm certainly appreciative of all we've heard thus far. I think for me, what I'd like to point out is that we live our lives based upon a script. And with Brother Muhammad referred to the Marvin Gaye song, it was written in 1971, and it's just as true and valid today as it was then, which says to me that there's a script that's being replayed like a old television episode. By script, I mean the real belief of a person as to what life will offer, how they will live, die, how they will make a living. Those are the things that are part of a life script. And in counseling, we try to help people reform a narrative for their life that extends beyond the one that has them in the place they are right now. And so when we look at our communities, we have to, in my mind, look at people and say, what is your script? What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about life? What do you believe you're going to end up? And for many of them, there's a generational cycle. My mother, my father, and so forth, they were poor, they didn't have a job, there's children having children. Those things are cyclical and they have been going on a long time. And what we have to do in our community is to change the script. But here's how I believe it has to happen. Number one, spiritually, yes. When we come to Christ, it offers us a whole new life outlook. And so we can take that on by faith and say, this is what I'm going to apply to my life. However, we are not simply spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings on a physical journey. And for that reason, we have to address the visible causes, which in my mind is institutional racism of a grand style, particularly in the city. I've been here for about 28 years now, and I've watched the continued ignoring or negligence in our community for these decades. And over the last about 10, maybe a little less than 10 years, I've watched St. Petersburg explode with development of so many different types, economic and otherwise. And what we find is that it's stagnant. So in that same little area called South Central St. Petersburg, the story didn't change. Neither did the outlook of the people who lived there, who died there within that little small radius. And so what I'm saying and what I'm suggesting is this. In order to change the script, the whole landscape has to be addressed. And the most immediate need is one's ability to make a living. I challenge the powers that be in St. Petersburg that were prominent in allowing all these high rises and everything to be built, billions of dollars of development, to do the same thing in that 5-mile radius between 49th Street and Martin Luther King and 5th Avenue South and 26th Avenue South. I challenge them. You cannot tell me that's not willful neglect. And when you freeze people into the same cycle, you are complicit in what is happening. And brothers and sisters, it's simple mathematics. What they have done in this city could have been done many times over in 28 years in that small area. What we have to have are people with leadership that envision, whose vision is for the entire city, to bring about parity, to help the people who are killing themselves and aborting themselves and their potential early, to see that life does not have to end that way. If we don't change that script, and if we don't demand those persons who are enforcing it institutionally and otherwise, it's going to be the same song. Marvin Gaye's song is going to be a hit in the next 40 years. We've got to demand from the powers that be to do what is right. Don't send money. Bring jobs and opportunities that's going to give me a way to make a living right now, and I'll put my dope down. Otherwise, the script will continue, and so will the results.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bishop Sykes. And Reverend Haynes, I have you next, and then I have a question from the community, and then Ms. Trinia Cox. Reverend Haynes, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Yes. First of all, thank you, President Eugene. Thank you for taking the helm of leadership for the NAACP. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, sir.
I say march on. Thank
you.
As we've seen, being born and raised in St. Petersburg, I was one of the people in the gas plant who was displaced. Had to listen to the cries of the people during the shooting in the back by a police officer of Palmer Sanders. Had to be around when Tyron Lewis was killed. And so as I've seen those things have created in the minds of people over the years, this frustration that ain't nobody gonna do nothing about that. And so I'm of the opinion that if we're going to do anything about the current situation we're in, we can't throw them all in the same box. We've got to literally take them out, each one, and identify what we're going to do with each one of those issues. If it's housing, we need to just talk about what we're going to do about housing. If it's anything dealing with education, we need to talk about that. We're going to talk about injustice. We need to talk about those issues. We need to separate them out and develop as a community a strategy for doing what we can. Now, I think we have to also realize we're not a monolithic community. I thank God for that. I thank God that all of us don't think the same way. But what we can do is figure out where are the common goals, what are the commonalities, what are those things that we can work for. These kids have nowhere to go and they have nothing to do. And I challenge us that while we used to have skating rinks and stuff close to us that we can go to, we've got to find some outlets for it. We've got to find some outlets for these people. They're frustrated. Their homes are being foreclosed on. The banks are taking back their properties. Their businesses are closing. They have no PPP and all those kinds of things. And there's a national temperature of what happens in D.C. that every day grabs our attention. I think what we want to do is what we need to do is we need to recognize that you and me and we are part of the solution for this. They drew a circle to exclude me. I drew a circle to include them.
Thank you so much for that, Reverend Hayes. I do appreciate that feedback and from everyone as well. We have Josette Green. Josette, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for heartfelt input. Reverend Hayes, I'm right there with you, that something needs to be done for these youth. On my street, on November 24th, we had the shooting of 3 young men. And while they are currently under police surveillance, the police are doing some actions, but I keep asking the question, what can be done now? Nothing is different. The young men still are on the same porch day after day. I'm sure the drug dealing continues. But my heart is into what can be done now with these young men. It's bound to erupt again. The worst thing I would want is for anyone else to be shot or injured. And there they are. We know that a couple of them have some criminal backgrounds already at young ages in their teens. So as a talk about what can be done, here's a situation right now. What could be done to work with these young men and divert them from the path that they're already on?
Thank you so much, Ms. Green. Is there anyone that would like to respond to Ms. Green's question?
Can I respond, Esther?
Absolutely.
I really want to uplift and I really kind of want to center this. There are people like in our community that are working with these young men, that are pouring into these young men. But what I'm seeing, and obviously I'm not the most learned person on the call, but what I'm seeing and what has been shared with me is that there is sometimes a lack of support and there's sometimes a lack of resources. So I want to, as we're talking about solutions, I really want to also kind of center that there are people, such as Brother John, such as Matt Bird, such as Antonio Brown, such as Jabbar Edmonds. I mean, I could start just such as Harold Bryant, who are such as Carla Bristol, who are actually doing work in our community, but also need the support and resources in a greater way to make a more of an impact than they're making now. So I do want to center that as we're discussing that.
Thank you so much for that.
So I want to echo her. I want to echo the representative as well as to Ms. Green. She resides in my neighborhood association. I'm the vice president of Count Park Neighborhood Association, and I want to get with her about that. But we're all saying the same thing, really, which is economics. You see what I'm saying? It's hard to talk to people. And I talked to a brother who just now recently come back home from the feds. And this is what you're dealing with. He said, you think people didn't tell me that they was watching me? I didn't care. I had a bunch of money and all the women. And so you also talking to a bunch to people who don't care. And so they have to learn how to care again. You know what I'm saying? But these programs that we keep echoing, it needs to come back down to the community. I mean, with people who really have the boots on the ground that's touching these people, once the resources kind of just trickle down the proper way, you know, those people can be infected properly, you know.
Let me echo real quick in on that as well, and I agree with what's been said. The one of the things that I used to do back in my running days is run in the hood during lunchtime, and stop and talk with the brothers that's on the streets, and you know what they were doing? They're selling drugs. And talking with them, it's like, hey, you know, I've made a mistake. I got a felony, can't get a job. So as we move forward in strategizing, because just like some of these kids, unfortunately, it's going to be real tough to get to them because they've been neglected so long, and I hope that I'm wrong, but my point is that we got to start now with clogging up that pipeline. Stop letting these kids get to that point. And you can't, when they 12, 13, 14, 15, it's too late. You got to start 0 to 5, 6, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15. And then we got to advocate to change laws, because to make a mistake should not be the end of all. It should not be a death sentence, if you will. Some of these kids feel like once I've broken the law, once I got a felony, I'm out. It's a wrap. So I just want to insert that while we were on that topic matter.
Thank you so much for that, Pastor Murphy. Ms. Trini, I do want to acknowledge that your hand is up, but if you can unmute yourself. But I also want to mention that we are welcoming the conversation and the questions to come from our millennials. They've been invited, and we do encourage you, if you are on this Zoom, please unmute yourself. Please speak up. This is a conversation that deeply and heavily involves you. Okay, Ms. Trinia?
Yes, this issue of police violence and gun violence is not new to the Black community. It really is not. And the solution does have to be strategic, it has to be sustainable, and it has to be comprehensive. And those on the call here are representing pieces of it. Yes, we have 40% of Black students, Black children who live in poverty in St. Petersburg, despite its economic growth. And there, as Pastor Sykes has said, there is an opportunity gap here. It has not touched us. It has not touched us. All right? So that's an issue where we have to talk about policy and advocacy. But also there's some personal responsibility, because we've made some poor choices along the way. And that speaks to the lack of skills that we have to bring to the table. When children are at risk, you start very early in nurturing and attaching yourselves to them. If parents can't do it, mentors can do it. We have some mentoring programs. They start and they begin, but they don't sustain themselves. They don't keep the child in the bubble until he or she is mature enough to make very educated and responsible choices. Their parents are at the table, and you know who those parents are. They're in your neighborhoods, and you know the ones that's not doing the best job. But we have not taught them how to be great parents again. They're limited to one way of operating, and that's illegal today. And it doesn't bring about the kind of results we want to see in our children. So the parental skills, how do you get the resiliency of our fathers, of those who we stand on? We have to do it by unifying. We talk about it, but we don't do it. If you get the child when the child is 0 to 5, as Pastor Murphy is saying, if you understand that your reach in terms of your spirituality is a 200-mile radius that has to deal with community development, if you talk about community empowerment, like Brother Muhammad, and understand that we have an obligation to touch those that are struggling, the opportunity gap can be taken care of by pressure, political pressure, by elected officials doing what they need to do, and by us standing together and demanding that the jewel of the South will reach all of us. But you also have to teach children how to make better choices. And you have to build resiliency of families by making sure the connections are there for the social services that we have. It is too scattered. It's not sustainable. It's not comprehensive, and it needs to be. This conversation should result in us all sitting down together and identifying those most at risk, that's the young ones, and then taking those that we think we can put our hands around and giving them some jobs. And some green jobs that pay well. So the opportunity is there. It has to do with us operating strategically and being very supportive of each other's efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trini. I do definitely appreciate your feedback.
If I may.
Absolutely. One second, Mr. Thompson. I do want to. It was a question that came in right before you let me know that you wanted to speak. Ms. Gretchen Johnson of St. Pete Beach is asking, is there a map of who is doing what and what they are doing and what they need? I know that council members Fig Sanders and Wheeler Bowman are listening hosts. But I would like to ask one of them, if they can, to unmute themselves and potentially respond to that particular question. Councilwoman Fig Sanders, you're muted.
Thank you. What was the question again?
Gretchen Johnson of St. Pete Beach is asking, is there a map of who is doing what and what they are doing and what they need?
So I'm not aware of that map, but to hopefully address her question, one of the initiatives that we are actually setting out to do, and everything that I've heard so far has been absolutely wonderful, and also taking into consideration, we will also be hosting a collaborative lab this week where we can look at all those organizations that would fit into that map that she's asking about. And we are looking at all of those resources, evaluations, mental assessments, all of those things will be taken into account. Then we're going to strategically put all of the resources. That's why we're listening to what everyone is saying, because then we'll be able to map that out and join those bridges and bring everyone in to the table. So that is the importance and the value of what we're doing here today. And once all of those are done, all of that information will be put to everyone's disposal. And again, thank you so much. I'm just so encouraged by everyone that wants to be a part, because when I call you, we are going to need you, because I'm looking for everyone's expertise and the uniqueness that they bring to the table to help us get this done.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Fig Sanders. Ms. Thompson, I am praying that answered your question, with the expectation that when we are done with these listening tours and collaborations, we will in fact be able to provide that map for you. So please stay engaged and stay tuned for that information. Mr. Thompson, you wanted to respond to the question that was posed earlier, sir?
I just wanted to comment, if I may, listening to all these beautiful, powerful minds. This is my home. I know a lot of the people on this call, they don't even know that I'm back in the city. But I wanted to comment on leadership. See, leaders lead by example, and the mission for a leader is essential. First thing, I think everything that has been said is beautiful, and I just wanted to jump on the back of some of these things. Before we can change our environment, we have to change, as Brother Moore said, our mindset. And as leaders, we cannot allow pride, or as Pastor Murphy said, get in the way of us working in harmony and working in a unified mindset. These young men, the guns, it's not the problem. The guns are not the problem, if I may expound on that just briefly. The mindset of the young men, the mindsets are the problem. The issues that they have been taught by the leadership not being in harmony. It takes a village. It takes a village. So before we can police anything, before we can correct anything in the community, we can deal with those immediate problems that come up at the instant or on this particular moment. But on the long haul, we have to work in harmony. I'm talking about everybody on this call. I'm talking about removing our personal pride. and understanding that the mission is essential. Being a retired military Marine, I want to challenge everyone to remove any kind of personal agenda, any kind of working for any position of grandeur. Let's work as servants in harmony with each other. Leadership, we're fragmented because of leadership. Let's work in harmony.
Thank you so much, sir. I do appreciate the feedback that you have provided. We do have a community question, and this question is coming from Lynette Davis. I'm going to read it, and it does end in a specific question. Lynette says, my understanding is once a youth commits crimes, they cannot be in summer employment programs. Local employers run background checks and may not hire youth in federally funded programs such as Pinellas Education Foundation. They may not be able to bring kids into programs with criminal records, which suggests to me once a youth and family are in the criminal justice system, they are disenfranchised. So what programs are specifically geared to youth once they are in the criminal justice system? And I believe this is a fantastic question for State Rep Michelle Rayner, Attorney Felton Howard, and Trinia Cox, and then whomever else may like to jump in. State Rep Michelle, can you go ahead and start? Thank you.
So Senator Roussan's probably going to get me for this, but he had a bill, and Attorney Felton Howard, I think you remember the PJO bill, where it was providing funds to different organizations to help these kids. And so he doesn't know that he and I are going to be revisiting that. But you're absolutely right. And this is actually a conversation that I've been having, Ms. Lynette, conversation I've been having with Florida Virtual Schools, conversation I've been having with some of the stakeholders in the community, because that's literally the problem. That literally is the problem. And we've had these solutions that are quick fixes, but the kids that actually need the help the most aren't getting it. The kids that actually need to be, nurtured in a more direct way are not getting that. And so right now there is, and I hate to use this word, but there's not a lot to incentivize organizations or stakeholders to take kids who may have several felonies or a felony that would be considered a violent felony. And people are weighing the liability of it. So you're absolutely right. So one of my legislative initiatives is to actually to look at that, to see if we can provide funding, whether it's through revitalizing the PJO program in that bill, or is it and maybe having St. Pete once again be the model for the rest of the state, or looking at other ways to make sure that we're able to get that. So, you're literally saying like conversations I even had with my staff today as regard to one of my legislative priorities, because there's really little to no programs for children, especially our children who have these, maybe juvenile felonies. And, folks aren't wanting to work with them, give them opportunities, or give these family opportunities.
Thank you so much, State Rep Rayner. Thank you so much for that response. Attorney Felton Howard?
Well, I was going to say there are some companies that will hire people with felonies. I know that we probably need to, come up with a list of who those companies are, so we can direct people to those particular jobs. But as a former criminal defense attorney, I can say that every person that I ever represented that sold drugs just about would do something differently if they had an opportunity to make a livable wage. And so we have to create opportunities for especially young men, when they're coming out of high school, and you have that period where you're not a child, but you're not quite an adult, and you're trying to figure out what to do. And I can name, 3 or 4 young people that chose to sell drugs because they couldn't find a job, and that wasn't the right decision to make. But we as a community need to be there to provide opportunities for those youth so that they don't make those decisions. So, we just have to be more strategic and work on identifying who those people are and matching them with opportunities.
Thank you so much for that, Attorney Felton Howard. Ms. Trinia, did you want to provide any response? And I asked you to respond because of the work that you've done with JWB.
Yeah, exactly. This whole issue of juveniles with felonies and how do they access employability opportunities. And the thing is, most of our programs for youth jobs program, very little that we have, believe it or not, for actual youth employment. We do youth development, but not youth employment. And these kids need money because 40% of them are living in poverty anyway. And the problem there is that our programs, even those funded by JWB and the city of St. Petersburg, many times the focus is not on those who have felonies, but are on those who do not have felonies. So those children are experiencing the same kinds of difficulties and frustrations, if you will, as the adults who have felonies, okay? Because they are not considered the primary candidate for jobs. For those companies who do, we need to know who they are because that's a well-kept secret. I'm sure Watson Haynes knows some of those because he's worked very diligently with the youth population. But we have to make certain that we get more slots for those children to get jobs. That's so important. And how do we do that? If we push the government to do the same, but certainly our faith-based organizations, they can hire children during the summer, at least 2 per church. It's 131, so maybe 20 of them might want to do that. Another way we can do that is making sure that those parents of those children can meet their needs by making sure that minorities are involved in these city programs, city jobs, development programs. The minority businesses here are not utilized very highly on this reconstruction, this redevelopment. We're just beginning to do the disparity study now, okay, to say that they're not at the table. And we're not pushing strong enough to make sure we have the livable wages that they need. So yes, the youth is a problem. It's also a problem that you're more likely to find yourself getting a felony here for school misconduct. That's an ongoing issue here. We're 19% of the population, and yet 67% of those who have school arrests are children of color. And this is a big issue, and that starts that pipeline to prison. So we got to teach our children how to behave, and we got to teach the school system to be less racist in their identification and less punitive in how they handle it and deal with school-based solutions as opposed to relying on the law enforcement system to do it. And then when it comes to jobs, if you don't want them selling dope, okay, then give them some legitimate means to have a job. So we're going to have to ask those who have businesses in our churches to hire them. And then we're going to have to push the city to have programs that deal with those who have felonies. If not, graduate them to the criminal justice system. Thank you.
So much, Ms. Trinia. Pastor Murphy, I see that you want to respond. And just really quick, Muriel and Reverend Irby, I do see your hands. I'll call on you shortly. Go ahead, Pastor Murphy.
Yeah, I really agree with all that Trinia is saying. And as she was talking, it's just going to come down to us adopting families.
Yes.
We're going to have to adopt families. The reason why I say that,
yes,
my son is coaching at Gibbs High School, so I've had some interactions with kids at the high school as their chaplain for the football team. The respect has really gone completely out the window with our children, and that's because it's being tolerated or not taught how to respect folk at home. This is just critical. We just got to own up to some of this stuff. So as we advocate, for change, for laws to be changed, for people to be able to, once they got in the fellows, still be able to get a job and so forth and so on, we've got to do some other stuff too. We got to step up to the plate and making sure that because some of these families and young people feel like I'm in this by myself, nobody cares, so they just in this world trying to make it on their own. We got to perhaps come out of our comfort zone and adopt families and help them get through some of these tough times. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Murphy. And I'm going to tell you that adoptive family is so key and prevalent. My family growing up was a recipient of an adoptive family. and it was key. I want to allow Muriel Summers. Muriel, go ahead and unmute yourself. I do see that you have been waiting a while with your hand raised. And then Pastor Irby, I will come to you. And then Pastor Sykes, I see your hand and I will come to you next. Go ahead, Muriel.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Of course, I wouldn't miss it. Thank you so much, Madam President, for hosting this. And, it's just been a privilege to hear perspectives from all around the community. I've had the pleasure to kind of work alongside some of these individuals who are speaking and love some of the things that I've been hearing thus far. My question is, Gypsy Gallardo, she did a report a few years ago on the economic status of South St. Pete. And when we get through the meat and potatoes of everything that everyone's talking about, all roads seem to be pointing back to opportunity and economic expansion. But one of the things that I thought was critical when I analyzed that report was the mindset of our young people as we try to, create these programs and these processes. And so my question here for all of these different sects, from the spiritual to the grassroots, to our official, representatives, is, how do we address that? Dr. Cornel West calls it nihilism, right? This mentality that's filled with cynicism, right? That doesn't buy in to any of the legitimate avenues to American prosperity, because unfortunately, we've gone to school and we've seen that our community sometimes has been saturated with this idea that it's easier to make quick money, that it's easier to take illegitimate paths to success than to get your certification, than to go to this program or to hold down this job. And I think that's a big barrier. I think everybody on this call in their own right is doing their best to move the needle forward, and I commend everyone. But as we move into this next decade, I think it's key, and I just want to hear how you guys in your own individual right can address that mindset that seeps into the minds of so many of our young people.
Okay.
That's my aid.
For sure. Do we need to formulate the question succinctly, or does anyone want to jump in and respond?
I'd like to jump in.
Go ahead, Brother John.
Go ahead, Brother John.
One of the things, and this is maybe not fully responding to the whole question, but an aspect that kind of resonated with me. When we talk about the mindset of quick money and criminal behavior, we did a listening tour back in 2012, 2013, 2014. And when we talked about it, the result of that was our campaign called Smart is the New Gangster. And in examining that, when we hear about gangsters, we don't think about Joe Kennedy, who was a bootlegger, who had two sons that, were officers. You don't think about, John Wayne. You don't think about, Bernie Madoff. You don't think about
Donald Trump,
Billy the Kid. You don't think about the Dillinger and all of these. What's the name? Guy used to rob trains. Help me, Pastor Murphy.
I did Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. We don't think about them as criminals. And so Donald Trump was really big in the rap community. Bill Gates, Donald Trump, let me in now. We would sing about them because they were the epitome of success according to American popular culture. And they were gangsters and are gangsters. And so I think the lens that we use to look is very narrow because we're focusing on our community, not looking at it in the context that we are living in a society that promotes gangsterism and quick money, or, the rebel without a pause or without a cause, and we other them. So we call them gangs when they're in the streets, and they're not in our circles. But in some circles, congregations are gangs, fraternities, sororities, neighborhood associations. Hell, these political parties, the way they show up sometimes during this election, that's gang mentality. Either you with us or you not. You red or you blue. Well, that's what they're doing on the streets. You got your secret handshake, in the fraternity. Well, the brothers on the hood, we got our handshakes. We got our thing that we doing too. So othering the community and making it as though we're someone else and they're not our children. Even the slogan, not my son. Well, we're othering them. Like, I'm good. It's not my son. You know, it's your son. Well, we have a responsibility to all of the children. So even if it's not my son, it's still your son, and your son is my nephew because you're my brother. And so I think language matters in the way we approach it, and then looking at it holistically and seeing that we're closer together and we're mirroring behavior that's being fed to us daily by the broader society is the thought that was inspired. Now, I don't know if that answered the question, but that's what you inspired in this.
Well, thank you for that response, Brother John. I believe it was heartfelt, and it is true. I remember that campaign, "Smart as a New Gangster." I want to jump over to Pastor Irby. He's had his hand up for a while, and just as we go along the lines, Pastor Sykes, I will come to you after Pastor Irby, and then we have a community member, Alexander Riviera, who would like to speak. So Pastor Irby, if you could unmute yourself. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this, President Eugene, and this august aggregation in a rich and important conversation. I just got 2 texts from people, and I know Brother John and his passion, he's been out there with Not My Son many nights, and so I don't take it as an attack. But what I was asked, because I love that brother, and so in the passion, I think what we do have to make sure we have clarity around definitions as we go forward. Not My Son was about saying not another son in the city of St. Petersburg would die senselessly, right? And Representative Rousseau hearkening Not My House. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think we can build on. But my specific response is actually 3 words. One is hope. The other is courage. And thirdly is strategy, right?
Strategy.
Right. We have to have strategy because there's no one component that's more important than the other. We have multiple layers of dehumanization and deconstruction in our community that's over 400 years old that we have to acknowledge. None of this just started. It's been ongoing, and it has been a systematic strategy. My initial thought, where I felt like I had to raise my hand and get in the conversation, is that everybody on this line needs to understand that we live in a resource-rich county. There are tremendous resources, and as Bishop Sykes alluded to, they're disproportionately invested in the places where there's the highest need, and that's not by coincidence. And so we do need this people power to come together to manifest the value of these young lives and these teenage lives and these returning citizens' lives in our community. Because once they are hopeless, it is almost impossible to bring them back and to talk about teaching them when they have been abused and abandoned for so long.
Thank you so much for that, Pastor Irby. I do appreciate your feedback. Pastor Sykes, if you can unmute yourself, please, sir.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. First of all, what I'd like to lay out there is just a fundamental thing. What is a human being's first priority other than survival? And they will do that by any means necessary. People will eat each other to survive. So with that baseline, we have to understand that anything that they do beyond that, that's survival oriented, is really reacting to what's available, to allow them to survive. And in a community that's crushed beneath the oppression that this community has been, the opportunity and options for survival are very few. I had a conversation with Governor Scott, and I asked him, I said, why did you extend a person's ability to apply for their right back from 5 to 7 years? And he said, well, I want to make sure that they change their lives. I said, but do you understand what is going to happen to them economically while they're waiting? He said, well, my plan is to create so many jobs that it's not going to matter what kind of record they have. Now, what he said was, kind of evil, but in a way, what he was saying was, if you create enough jobs, people are going to say, we need workers, come on and start working. That's why they work with undocumented people and all of that. What we need in our community is, just a forthright influx of real opportunities to survive and thrive. It cannot be suspended over the next 10 or 15 years. There are too many people that will die. And then finally, what I want to say is this. When the Black Lives Matter movement was marching down at the pier, and I was part of one of those marches, let me just say this. The powers that be and the money makers in St. Petersburg could care less, because while you were marching down there at the pier, they were making deals on their boats for what else they were going to take from the south side of St. Petersburg. They ride through my church parking lot looking to see what they can get. So what we have to understand is we have to stop attacking the leaves and, as someone say, go to the root, because the root is where the money. Follow the money and you'll find the root cause of everything that's going on in our community, because it makes money. Black people are a commodity. They use us from the rooter to the tutor, and they make money off of everything we are and do, dead or alive. And until we understand that, we're going to be fighting each other. We'll never see the real enemy.
Thank you so much for that feedback, Pastor Sykes. Very, very, very pivotal. I wanted to take a community comment from Joseph Robinson. Joseph says the young adults and children with felonies influence the non-felony young adults and children. Joseph says that we need to intervene in this peer group cycle. Does anyone want to respond to that comment?
I'd like to comment on it.
Absolutely.
I wanted to say something earlier about that word felony. See, we create labels, and those labels have been created to suppress us. That's just another excuse, as Pastor Sykes, Bishop Sykes, was saying, to keep us from rising up in the economy and having equal opportunities. Because a person makes a mistake, they should be labeled for the rest of their lives as a felon. I would like to know, what can we do, what law can be passed to remove that term in itself when an individual has served their 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, 5 years, have done their time, paid for their errors. What can we do to keep them from being labeled? And this is the only thing that's going to help. It's not about those who have felonies influencing the ones who do not. It's about human beings, people who have distressed mindsets, affecting others with their distressed mindset, creating more distress. It's about those who have been in these situations, who have lost hope, having that crab in the bucket mindset where they don't want to see anyone else excel or move forward. So if we can remove that label, whatever we can do, because I'll be finished. After a person has done what they're supposed to do, in the sense of reciprocity for their error, their wrong, then we should not label them for the rest of their lives to hinder them from moving forward and being progressive.
Thank you so much for that, Archbishop Thompson. Does anyone want to respond to that comment? And Council Member Wheeler Bowman, I do see your hand raised, and I will come to you next.
I too echo what people been saying about the mindset. But we also should be aware of these cycles that our planet has 4 of them. We call them seasons. Everything keep coming around. And I think it's how Melvin and the Blue Notes was saying it back in the 70s about wake up. He told the preacher to wake up. He told the teacher to wake up. He told everybody to wake up. And then around 2012, that same creative cycle came around our community again. And we were telling people to wake up again. We're telling our children to share stuff. And I'm echoing the black professor who offers the book, Black People Just Don't Get It. It's like we haven't moved into a stage of acceptance as people, you know what I'm saying? And when we accept things, then the energy that goes out can come back in. And so when we accept things, then we won't be calling for jobs. We'll be calling for businesses that's created by us, because there's no one else's responsibility to employ our people. You see what I'm saying? But that's a mindset issue. You know, Asian on Asian violence has never been echoed that it needs to stop, although all Asian gangs killed Asian people, for the most part. I know in other communities, Asian gangs tend to kill kind of spew over. But we tend to live a long time, and we don't hear about other people's violence on each other need to stop other than our own. And so now we've also identified ourselves as a problem now. World War I and World War II is a race fighting each other. You see what I'm saying? But you don't hear that white on white violence needs to stop. And so when we mentally stop addressing ourselves as the problem that other people have identified us as, and then now we've picked up their talking points, right? These are their talking points. Our violence on each other ain't the issue. That's called nature. People who live around one another, they'll commit crimes against one another. People already know this stuff. You see what I'm saying? And I just think that we'll look a lot better as people when we get back to the group economics. As a group of people, we don't look right telling other people we can fix a whole city when our community is one that's in shambles. I just don't think we look good as men when we stand there and do this and behave this way in front of everybody in the world. That's a mindset issue. You see what I'm saying? There's nobody else's responsibility job on this planet Earth to feed us but our own selves first. That is the first law of nature. And when we stop dealing with nature, we stop dealing with reality as people. You see what I'm saying? Other people started calling us stuff like complainers and that we want handouts. You know what I'm saying? Dr. Carter G. Woodson said that in 1933, the miseducation of the Negro had already taken place, and the education system really hasn't changed for the Negro. You see what I'm saying? And we're identifying ourselves as educated right now. So how are we educated? We're educated enough to go against our own interests right in front of our face. You see what I'm saying? And so the cycle of wake up, I love it, because it spoke to y'all in such a beautiful song in the 70s, and it's back again, and it's just time for us to fully execute this type of stuff. These gangs that we talk about in LA, they keep on bringing a piece to each other, but we got to remember, them gangs was created because they were stopping the police from fighting us. And the police had the audacity to jump on top of a car like his life was even threatened. His life was never threatened when he stood on top of a car. He never felt his life was threatened. He never felt that he had to neutralize a threat. He had time to climb on top of a car. You see what I'm saying? So it's about time to move into accepting. And I love the people on the phone on this Zoom right now. Pastor Sykes, every time I see his face and see his name, I love him to death, because he gave me an opportunity to sell insurance to his school. And so I know that it's all, this is back in 2012 when I first started my career into insurance. Let's address that too, right? Because I was 30 years old before I ever heard of a word called financial literacy. And so when we always want to address these children, we also got to remember that we the adults that's poisoning them too. So we got to educate our adults as well. You see what I'm saying? There's no financial literacy being taking place in our community when we only getting it when y'all one semester in the 12th grade. I'm talking about reality right now. And I don't want to keep getting too long-winded because there's a bunch of preachers here, and I feel like I'm talking to the choir. But I'm just saying, y'all, it's time for us to wake up for real. Just like how Melvin told y'all.
All right, now I'm with you. And someone put in the comment section, Monique says we should have a wake up campaign. So Reno, you are charged with that campaign. That campaign. I see Pastor Murphy unmuted himself, but Pastor Murphy, give me 1 second. Let me get Council Member Wheeler Bowman, and we had Community member Dave Wilson. Brother John, I see your hand, but I'll take Pastor Murphy before Brother John. Go ahead, Council Member Wheeler Bowman.
Thank you, Ms. Esther, and thank you for hosting this. I know I am just a listening host, but I could not just sit and listen. Pastor Murphy, when he first spoke, he said it very well. He said, we tear down the other person. We need to come together. And as a community, that is what we need to do. I was a part of Brother John's campaign to stop the violence movement in 2011. We worked together, me, him, Carlos, Brother Jabbar. We all did that to just try. Standing on corners, honking for peace and all of this. I remember all of that. In our community, it is the crowd mentality, and it's so sad because all we have to do is come together, and we can do what we need to do to get our community where it needs to be. I'm an elected official, but if you don't think that I don't cry at night, I don't hurt, I'm a resident here. I may be elected, but I live here. I'm a resident. So just because I have a title before my name do not mean that I don't feel a certain way. That I don't hurt when other people lose their kids or lose their children, or other things go on in our community. It's just time for us to step up and just to do what we need to do for our community. Someone mentioned, I think it was Pastor Murphy, I could be wrong, about adopting a family, and someone talked about the police shootings. You talk about the police shootings, but where are you when a Black person shoot and kill another Black person? I could name off a list of names of people that have been killed by other Black people in our community, and nobody says nothing. They don't come out, they don't march. But as soon as someone is shot or killed by a police officer, they want to come out and they want to march and kill and say this and that and the third. But if we're going to do it, we're going to do it the right way. We're going to do it all around. It doesn't matter. Murder is murder. It has no color, no gender. Nothing. Let's just do it all around. So let's just not focus on a police killed somebody. Let's focus on somebody was murdered. My son was shot 9 times with a 9mm and a 40 by 2 different people. Gabe Wallace. I can go on and name many people that has been killed Black on Black crime. But then when you want to come and just talk about police officers, let's get it straight. Let's do it the right way. If we're going to do this, let's do it the right way. Let's leave the crap mentality alone. Let us come together as a Black community that we always say that we want to do. And like Pastor Murphy said, we tear down the other person. We tear down our own self. When is this going to stop? When are we going to come together as a community and say this has to stop and enough is enough? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Councilmember Wheeler Bowman. I too lost a brother in 2017 to gun violence, and this is near and dear to my heart. And so I understand all of this. It leads one to get emotional, but we have to. It's time, and it is time. It's time. I have Brother John. I see your hand. Mr. Dave Wilson, I'll go to you next, and then Reverend Murphy, you after that, and then Gypsy, and then we have a community question there after that. Brother John?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I think one of the fundamental differences when we talk about police violence versus internal violence is the expectation that we have, because in one scenario, these are sworn officers and individuals who are commissioned with preserving and protecting the safety of the community. And when they get out of line, it causes a different reaction because of the expectation that we have for the profession that they've chosen versus, and not versus, when we look at it from another lens, we also see that we should also, and I agree with you, we should have that same expectation on our own community, and we should have that same standard that we have, uphold. But that's not the reality right now. So we do need to look at community standards and the way we view these things. But there is an expectation from those who are sworn to perform a certain duty and a service, and when they abuse that privilege, really, because it is a privilege and an honor to serve if you have the servant leader mentality. And so when they abuse that privilege and abuse the community in the name of service, it causes a different reaction from someone who had a problem with his brother and didn't know how to properly solve it or resolve the conflict. Here's an idea, two ideas. The first one I propose is let's practice conflict resolution among the leadership, as we call it. And I use the term so-called leaders a lot of times because we all have different definitions of what that means. But for those of us who have been charged with doing this work and who have accepted a certain level of responsibility, we have a lot of beef among us. I mean, those who were with Christman and those who were with Baker, that thing got ugly. When did you all get together and say we're gonna squash our beef and resolve our conflict for the good of the whole? Are we thinking like that? Are we thinking like if we model the behavior and we settle our differences, maybe then we can form that Voltron that Reno talks about oftentimes. And the last thing, the other idea is I'm hearing about opportunities a lot. So what if we reimagined the way we patrol and walk the beat in our community, and we do walking audits? And so instead of looking for criminals and looking for crime to report, let's look for superheroes who are undiscovered. Let's look for those diamonds in the rough. And instead of a crime task force or an auto theft task force, let's create an opportunity task force. Where's the task force that's saying, yo, I got a book full of opportunities. If you're homeless, I got a book with homeless resources in it. If you need a job, I got resources in it. What's stopping us from having our police and our community walk together and unite and say, we're going to do an opportunity task force? Like, we're going to catalog these opportunities and be very intentional about taking them to the streets, as opposed to waiting for somebody to get in trouble. When we see them hanging out, let's have that conversation. What you got going on, brother? Did you know that this opportunity was available? And let's start to measure and track the outcomes of an opportunity task force as opposed to a crime task force, because we may be looking at the next Carter G. Woodson. We may be looking at the next Professor Amos Wilson. We may be looking at the next Madam C.J. Walker, if we look at them through the lens of an opportunity or someone who's there to be developed and a superpower that they have that they can contribute to bettering the community, as opposed to looking at them as a problem to be solved.
Thank you so much for that, Brother John. That was powerful. Mr. Dave Wilson, are you able to unmute yourself, please?
Yes, thank you so much, and appreciate everybody's feedback and everything that's been shared. I'm primarily here to listen tonight and benefited from hearing everybody's contribution. One thing I just wonder, on top of all the other great recommendations, is there something that we could do during this time to take advantage of the fact that there seems to be a higher awareness among the country generally about inequality and hardship, and the whole Bishop Sykes mentioned the Black Lives Matter, but I can't help feeling that a lot of the challenges and the hardship and the suffering that happened south of Central in one way or another started north of Central, were caused by things historically and probably still are being impacted today. But could one aspect of what we're doing be to try to rally the larger community to get to bridge some of the divides and see if there can be more resources and more people to kind of shoulder up in the effort and the work that you're talking about doing.
Thank you for that, Mr. Wilson. Does anyone on our panel want to respond to Mr. Wilson's question?
Well, I'll respond. I mean, I absolutely agree. I'm a very strong advocate of reaching out to the broader community because I think that it's a problem that affects the Black community, but it's a problem that affects the St. Petersburg community. And so we all have to be invested in the solution. And so I welcome, inclusion and diversity. I mean, we have to be real. We as African Americans represent about 13% of the population, but almost 50% of the homicides in this country. It's a real problem, and we have to come up with real solutions. And that's going to take, everybody who's willing to jump on board to address it. And I think we can do it. But if we don't, we're going to be sitting here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, having the same conversation.
Thank you so much for that, Attorney Felton Howard. Is there anyone else that would like to respond?
Yeah, I will briefly. As long as we continue to deal with identity crisis as well, as people, we're going to continue to have issues as well. One of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King is, "Here is the Negro who has found himself an exile on his own land." You know what I'm saying? And so it's a lot of times we dealing with classifications and paperwork. You know what I'm saying? How we getting filed as a people. That's why I say when we get back to these group economics, man, we can really start to target our real issues along with our mindset. That's why with our current mindset, you can give us $1 billion and we'll all be able to give it back to every nationality on this planet except for ourselves with the current mindset. And so as long as we really start to go into our history and start to re-educate ourselves, remember we're running a program, and this program being downloaded into us through the school system. You see what I'm saying? And this program ain't really teaching us who we are as people. You know what I mean? And I said as quickly as we get back to knowing who we are and what we should be doing, then we can start to deal with the leaves on the trees that we're talking about, which is employment. When we talk about employment, let's be specific with employment. When we talk about crabs in the bucket, let's flip that mentality. We've been programmed to think negative, so we think positive first, we can get a positive outcome. With crabs in the bucket, all right, somebody put us in the bucket, they tried us, but it's time to pull us out the bucket. Quit having the same narrative about us being crabs in the bucket. You know what I'm saying? We got to flip that narrative. We're crabs in the bucket, all right, time to pull us out. I'm gonna have my Uncle James Thompson on the line right now. He told me in the beginning of my journey, when I first started to re-educate myself, I got 3 words for you. One in particular word is melanin. That's the first time I heard the word melanin. I was a grown man. You see what I'm saying? And that was on the epidermis of our skin. I didn't know it was all in the organs of our body. So knowledge of self has to take place. We have to know that we have more than a mile of intestines out of us. You see what I'm saying? We have to know more about ourselves, because people that have studied more than just the melanin on our skin. They studied everything about our essence, and they repackage and selling it back to us. They shut down the numbers game on y'all.
Thank you.
They shut down.
Thank you.
I'll give you some money. Why don't you buy me?
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry.
Thank you so. No, I think that was someone else who was talking to someone else in the background. Pastor Murphy, did you want to go ahead and comment, sir?
Yeah, thank you so very much. 2 things that in regards to what Bishop Thompson was saying, and I can't. It's been so much time now, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it has to do with laws and policies. We need to have an agenda to start getting people elected to office. All of the city council, school boards, county commissioner, and then at the state and national level, and then elect folks and hold them accountable, because they're the ones that's making the laws and the policy. That's why you got this big race happening in Georgia right now. The second thing is, and I love my brother Reno. I'm so glad I had a chance to go on a field trip with him. But Brother Reno was talking about the music back in our day, and I'm glad to be back there in the 70s. When Harold Melvin was talking about "Wake Up Everybody" and Marvin Gaye, "What's Going On" and so forth. We need to hold our artists accountable too, that they not poison our minds, because this is what Reno is talking about. The way we think is also what's being poured into our minds, and the music is so negative that the kids are listening to. You know, we like Steve Harvey said, we made music talking about love. But okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. That's y'all know what I'm talking about. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Pastor Murphy. Gypsy, if you can unmute yourself,
Can you hear me, Esther?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm on deadline and I'm hungry, and so this is not well thought out. But I felt like I had to speak on a couple of things. Number one, in case we have not already done this, I was 10 minutes late logging on. I just want to say thank you, and just honor the effort being put forth by council members Deborah Figg-Saunders and Lisa Wheeler-Bowman. As I said to somebody recently, this is probably the most difficult issue or challenge you could seek to lead on in the community, bar none. And so to be out front on this issue and to be rallying all of us to come together around solutions is challenging. These ladies are taking hits and insults. They may be experiencing some hurt feelings. I know Deborah extremely well, so I know she's tough enough to take that. But it is not without effort. So I felt like I had to lift them up in this dialogue and give honor to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And secondly, I felt like I wanted to come on and rebuke the false perception that we can't work together. But through the combined comments of everybody, I'm humbled and have a greater understanding of that. I wanted to put some clarity around that. We can work together. We do work together. There are represented on this phone call likely 25 collaborative and collective initiatives that are bearing fruit. I just want to lift up just one example. We spent 6 years organizing advocates to lobby the city to create the South St. Petersburg CRA. It took 6 years. It took, activating 1,000 activists in that, but we did it. And I think what I'm learning through this phone call is, yes, there are examples where we come together collaboratively, but we have not achieved the scale of united action that we need to make transformative change that goes deep into the heart, marrow, lungs, and every other organ system of our community. And I think that now is the time for that. We have achieved the goal of the 2020 plan to reduce poverty by 30% in South St. Petersburg. We've increased youth employment. We've reduced juvenile arrest, adult arrest. Crime is on a long-term trend downward. A lot has been achieved in our community over the past decade, especially, and even during the Baker administration, a lot was achieved under that as well. But I think that now is the time when we can rally what seems to be an overwhelming agreement among our people to unite behind the Enough is Enough campaign. I personally disagree with the term Black on Black crime. I personally disagree with pointing the finger to us as Black people and laying this at our feet and not challenging system leaders to come with substantial enough investments to make that transformative change. So while there are things about Enough is Enough that don't necessarily perfectly fit with me, I am 100% on board with putting our weight and energy behind what these ladies are trying to organize. And I believe therein is our ability to ask for the not 100,000, not 1 million, but the multi-million-dollar investments, and then demand that they go to community-based organizations who are working on the ground and able to make change. One final thought, I know I'm way over time, is to Mr. Wilson's comment The other thing I think that is important is under Enough is Enough, doing something now, and leveraging the energy in the post-George Floyd world, where the entire world has awakened to the challenges of structural racism, to call upon private folks and public folks to take up something in the very near term under the Enough is Enough banner. Thank you so much, Esther.
Thank you so much for that, Gypsy, and definitely appreciate all of the feedback and all of the work that you have done in our community. It is a heavy burden that many have taken on, and we have to applaud the ones that have stood out as champions and continue to fight that fight. I do want to give the floor to a community member, Regina. She'd like to speak from the point of a mother of 3 boys. And then I also noticed that Mr. Ray Tampa is on the line. And so I would like to ask him if he has any feedback to please unmute himself after Regina. Regina, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Thank you, Esther. What I just would like to say, I'm listening to what everyone is saying, and I understand that you want to do programs and throw money at the issues, but we have to get down to where it actually starts. It starts with the family in the home, because if you think about it, every Black person represented on this line, think back to when your grandmother and your big moms was alive. There was just a sense of certain things that you just did not do as a child. You stayed in your place. You grew up. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. When Big Mama and grandmothers passed away, it's like the family just went haywire. There's a big gap between the elderly generation and the younger generation that needs to be mended. And I think the adoption that Pastor Murphy was speaking about would help with that, but we have to get back to the root of the problem. It starts in the home. When I lived in Georgia, they had a program for the young pregnant women where they brought in and they gave them gift cards. They gave them vouchers to purchase things for the baby and to help the fathers come together with the mothers, because if they did a study that said if they could keep the fathers through the pregnancies, they were more likely to create that 2-parent home to help them, teach them how to raise that child. I was in the laundromat one day with a grandmother, and it broke my heart. We were talking about the law where you can't chastise or whoop your child, and this woman said, as a grandmother, she was afraid to whoop her grandchild for doing something he had no business doing, or just chastising. And then, like I said, it broke my heart, because that's where we have to get back to. They have to understand that there's just some stuff that you will get disciplined for. Now, when I raised my boys, like I said, I am a mother of 3 grown. I have a 25-year-old, a 23-year-old, and an 18-year-old. None of them thank God, none of them has seen the inside of a jail cell. I'm not someone's grandmother at a young age, but I've gone to school with women who was 36 years old and grandmother. We have to get back to helping these young women, teaching them how to raise these children. Years ago, Mount Zion had a program where they had a mentorship. The churches needs to get involved and create these type of mentorships, and like I say, adopt the families. I raised my boys from a young age, and I told them, I said, listen, if someone comes out there and try to get you to sell drugs, you better get enough for your mother, because I'm going to get on the corner, sell mine, and all us going to jail as a family. And not right now, to this day, none of my boys sell drugs. But that was something that I put in them long time ago. We have to instill those type of values in our children, in our youth. You can't throw money at it, because that's just like a deadbeat dad throwing money at a child.
Thank you so much for that feedback, Regina. You are absolutely correct. You know, we have lost that big mama oversight for the families, and it's needed, but I do believe that the community can provide that if we find the right solution. Mr. Tampa, if you can unmute yourself, would like to hear if you have any feedback in regards to what you've heard this evening.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First, it was my intent to just sit here and listen. If you hadn't called my name out, I wouldn't be talking. And I've heard some excellent comments. I'm very encouraged by the brilliance of all the people that we have in this city. That is shameful that with all this brilliance, we haven't been able to tackle this problem, because the gun violence in our community is not new. We've had cycles of it. I can go back to the time when Pastor Murphy and I went to Tampa with the chief of police and appeared on the Denise Fountain TV show talking about gun violence at that time. You all remember the horrific killing of Paris Hilton over there that is now Paris Avenue. And it goes on. And I heard Felton Howard say that we may be talking about these same things 10 years from now if we don't get a handle on it at this point. And that brings me to a comment that was made in 2017 at the Enid Davis Center when there was a debate for city council members at that time. A gentleman stepped to the microphone and asked a very profound question. And his question was, why are we talking about the same things 40 years later? 40 years later. So what I'm doing right now is asking for all of these brilliant minds to just identify one or two things that they really feel are solutions to this problem. And in saying that, I want to call your attention to the fact, well, you don't know this, but I had the opportunity to participate in a meeting Monday morning with 5 up-and-coming stars in our community. All of these young men, very talented, are young enough to be my sons, all of them. But they have great ideas about solutions in terms of addressing this gun violence. I want to say to you, President-elect Esther, as I've indicated earlier, I'm available to help out anytime you call. But I don't know how we're going to corral all of these brilliant minds. Maybe Gypsy can do that. She's so talented in so many areas. But how do you corral all these brilliant minds for about 2, 3, 4, 5 actual solutions to this problem? And I'm going to make one point here. A gentleman said, and I took notes on all these comments. He said, guns are not the problem. I disagree. Guns are the problem. They're not the only problem, but they're the problem. And being that the case, where are all these guns coming from? Where are they coming from? These kids don't have the money to go out and buy these AKRs or these assault weapons and high-powered weapons. How are they getting them? Now, you may say they're stealing them. Boy, is that many guns out there to be stolen? Okay, well, that again says guns represent a problem, because if they're so easily stolen, then the people that own the guns need to be held accountable for not having them in check. But guns do represent a problem. Back in the day, I remember telling the chief of police sitting in his office that there are some tales about a certain commercial entity that is channeling these guns into our community. And the chief was aware of that. So my question was, well, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? Okay, Again, I didn't intend to speak. I really enjoyed listening. I think I've heard some great people say some great things, and I do have notes. I have notes, and I just hope that at some point we can corral all these ideas and pare them down to maybe 5 solid points to make something really happen in this community. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Tampa. And we are winding down to our last 10 minutes. However, I do see everyone's hands. I'm going to ask you to please limit your response to 1 minute if possible. I'm going to go to State Representative Rayner first, and then I see Mr. Thompson. After that, I do see Maria Scruggs' hands. I see Council Member Deborah Figgs Sanders, and then finally we will end it with a community member, Kenitra Mercer, who is also on the NAACP. State Rep Michelle Rayner, it's on you. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again, Esther. This has been a beautiful conversation, and I just want to speak to 2 things. What my commitments are to be a part of the solution, but also just wanting to address the fact of us working together. You know, there's a difference between coalition and alignment. Coalitions fall apart. You know, coalitions kind of, okay, we meet every now and again and it's done. But the work that we're talking about is going to be deep alignment. And that doesn't mean that we're going to agree on every point. That doesn't mean we're going to do it exactly the way that you think I should do it. But it means that our goal is in common. It's the same, and we're working together for that goal. So my hope and my prayer is that this is not the last conversation that we have. This is not the last meeting that we have. This is not the last, maybe sometimes uncomfortable conversations. You know, in order to grow and to actually see things come to fruition has to get a little uncomfortable, but that's where I believe that's where we start to move forward. So I wanted to touch on that as well, but just also, you know, I would like to let y'all know, just on a state level, my commitment is, you know, looking at appropriations, looking at policies, looking at services versus impact, and actual genuine representation. Also, you know, I've been opening up doors to bridging collaboration with community folks and different community members, folks that we know, folks that are here that are now just starting the work. And then also my last challenge would be to the people, when you are asked or when you are called upon, you know, to do this work, please answer the call. Please don't be afraid. Please don't sit back. But when people are asking you to say, hey, we need you, answer the call, because we're asking because we need you. And so once again, I think this is the first in many wonderful conversations, and not just conversations, I think action items. So we in the community can be in deep alignment in order to see the change that we so desire.
Thank you so much for that response. Mr. Thompson, 1 minute on the clock.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to try to use my minute effectively. Mr. Tampa, I think you misunderstood me when I said guns were not the problem. I'm a Marine, carried a gun for a long time. If you set a gun on the table, it won't do anything but lay on the table. If it's not a gun, it could be a knife. It could lay on the table. What I'm saying, sir, is we need to deal with the mindset behind the misuse of the gun and deal with those who don't understand the proper use of the gun. Now, with that said, I'd like to move on to this point, mission. Mission essential. Regardless of this, enough is enough, NAACP, whatever the organization is, if we apply ourselves effectively towards understanding that the mission is what is essential. If we have 3 different things going on, quickly, mission is essential. A minute is up.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, and thank you for adhering to the minute. Maria, if you can unmute yourself, please. We have 1 minute on the clock. You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
I sure can. 1 minute on the clock.
1 minute is 8:47. I'm going to make this short and sweet. The guns are not the problem. The guns are symptomatic of a deeper issue. Is that we're not addressing as a community the social, economic, and political issues that we can control. One of those is ensuring that our children can eat proficiently. The NAACP launched an advocacy campaign that was designed as a result of 2-day collaborations with community partners. The results were powerful, and the answer was, what can we do to close the achievement gap for our children? Because we have a responsibility, and where I disagree with Gypsy is that we have to take ownership of the issue and stop assigning them to others. We have the power, Ray said, we have a lot said the magic word. We have a lot of brilliant minds. It's time that we use them and use them effectively and strategically.
Thank you so much for your response, Maria, and thank you for adhering to the 1 minute. Council Member Fig Sanders, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Thank you so much, and I'm going to try to stay within my minute. There was so much that was said here today, and I know I heard all of it, and I will like to also echo with what I've heard in regards to elected officials. Yes, we are to be held accountable, and I agree with my colleague that so does the community. And you don't know what this call has meant to me and how much it has bridged and made some differences in relationships. When we talk about throwing money at it, well, you know what? If we ask, all these young people to put down guns, we have to be able to replace that with something. We have to make sure that, yes, the mindset is definitely something that's deep-rooted, which is why I'm a firm believer in the words that we use. I don't call our children kids. I don't believe in Big Mama and different things like that. There has been a generational divide that we've allowed to happen. And until we reestablish those ranks in our daily lives where our children can understand that there's a certain level of respect that is owed. That's why that mom of those 3 boys, I'm a boy mom too, and you're absolutely right. We have to reinstitute those values that we've had growing up. So all of the things that you've taken and all the words that you've given, I hear you. I appreciate all of it. And a lot of these things will be addressed. And I want us to all sit at the table and have these conversations. And it's conversations like this, thank you so much for hosting, that will get us there. Because I know for a fact that there is unity in community. And I'm gonna strive. I'm committed to that, to make it happen. But again, it's gonna take us realizing and assessing our own peripherals, our own perspectives, and the words that we choose to use and the relationships that we choose to form and break as to the success of where we're going with this. But again, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone that took the time to participate and wanting to be a part of the solution. And I appreciate you for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Council Member Fig Sanders. Attorney Felton Howard, I'm going to go to you next. Kenitra, I did state that I was going to come to you next, but I think it's important for us to hear from the community voice at the end of this conversation. So if you can just forgive me and bear with me, Attorney Felton Howard, I'll go to you with 1 minute on the clock, and then Kenitra, we will come to you.
I just want to say that I think we're all pretty much saying the same thing. It's a complex problem with complex solutions, and I don't want us to get distracted about whether guns are the problem or they're not the problem. I think we need to come together on some core values as far as what we can agree on. And one point that I wanted to make, when I was involved in the Stop the Violence movement, there were 114 homicides in the city, and 69 of those were unsolved, and the vast majority of those were in the Black community. So we need to press the police department. I just want to make that point, to solve these homicides, because we may have people that are committing multiple homicides. We may, we need to solve these murders. So I just wanted to bring that point out.
Thank you so much for that, Attorney Felton Howard. Kenitra, if you can unmute yourself, you now have the floor with 1 minute on the clock, ma'am.
Well, yes, good evening. Thank you. Definitely appreciate you, President-elect. I'm glad to be following your leadership. To every panel, I appreciate you. Has been an honor to sit here. What resonates in my mind as I sit here and listen and I look out and I see my 14-year-old son and my 13-year-old cousin sit and converse with one another after having just laid my grandfather to rest, the male head of our family. I hear so much hurt, but that there's so much opportunity. Reno, who I value his word and his knowledge that we have to get to the root of who we are. We have to learn to love who we are. Brother John, our leadership is only as good as our community, and we are the community. And like everyone said, I believe wholeheartedly that we can come together and work together regardless of our differences. And one of the things I would like to see is more conversations such as these with more millennials and even our youth, because my sons have had so much to say since I joined NAACP. So thank you all.
Thank you for that, Kenitra. And we have rounded up our time for this call. You know, we began this 2-hour conversation saying, what do we feel our collective community response should be? And I will tell you that we've provided the answers collectively. Collectively we have. And I want to thank every panelist. I want to thank our honorary listening host, Council Member Fig Sanders and Council Member Wheeler Bowman. You know, the mantle is in our hands. I want to thank the millennials that participated. You know, we are charged with solving what is perceived as wrong in our community. And I believe that we have the answers right here, right now. And it's simply a matter of collectively coming together and putting the solution on the table and then moving forward with the actions that's needed. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for participating. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to host. I appreciate you and I honor you where you are in this moment. And in the words that I say, now is the time. Action is needed. Let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, President-elect.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Carlia, you have the control of the room if you want to stop recording, and then we can end it at this time.
We just don't want to stop telling you how much we appreciate you.
Well, Reverend Hayes, you know I can listen to it all night.
Is Pastor Murphy still going to close us out in prayer?
Yes, sir. I am so sorry, Pastor Murphy. Please, if you don't mind.
Let us pray. Father, in the mighty name of your Son, Jesus, Lord, we really come so humbly before your glorious and righteous throne. You are our divine creator. You are our sustainer, our provider, our protector. Lord, you're the author and finisher of our faith. You know everything that there is to know about us. Many hearts was expressed tonight about the condition that's in our community. And Lord, we discussed, we conversed, communicated about what we think needs to take place. We talked about strategies and just being more committed in adopting families and all of that, God. But Lord, with all that we have tried to do and what using our minds, Lord, we're asking for divine intervention. We're asking you, Lord, to, after we've done all that we can do, we've strategized and we planned, we communicated. Now, Lord, you intervene. Intervene, yes, you have always done before, God. You have always taken us out of tough situations. You brought us out of slavery. You brought us out of Jim Crowism. Lord, you can bring us out of this disaster, this hard time that we're in, where our lives seem to be marginalized. So we're praying tonight, oh God, that every thought, every word that was spoken, that you would take and capture it, Lord, and do something spectacular with it, magnificent with it, God. That it won't just be conversation, but the conversation will turn into action. And the men and women that are on this call today, who you have blessed with so many gifts and talents, will come together collectively and do something great for our community, for our people. So we're praying for health and wealth. We're praying for safety and security. We're praying for a spiritual awakening, community revival, and economic inclusion, and social healing, and political involvement. We're praying for all those things that's good, that impact our people, that impact our community. So we thank you for those who are on this call tonight, those who care, those who have a heart for our people. Everyone that's on this call, they're concerned. So we thank you for them. And we ask that you will bless them, put a shield of protection around them and their loved ones. Lord, we need you. We need you desperately, God. Lord, have mercy on us. Please, God, we need you, Father. And Lord, wherever there's been broken relationships, mend the relationships, God. God, I beg and ask for forgiveness because it's a powerful word. Just like love, forgiveness. You forgave us. Help us to forgive one another and help us to be concerned about others. We need you, Lord. And I know it's been a long night, Lord, but we don't want to be short with you because we need you. We need more prayer. There's power in prayer. We know when we communicate with you, Lord, it's dialogue, not monologue. You speak back to us. So speak to us, God. Show us what we need to see. Tell us what we need to do, Father, in a divine way, in a supernatural way. I pray that there be no more killings in our community. I pray, God, that families will come together. I pray for our young people. I pray for our single mothers. I pray for our fathers, Lord, many of those that have been incarcerated now. God, heal our city, heal our land, Lord, in the name of Jesus. Give us favor, God, with our government. Give us favor, Lord, in all levels of government. We need you, Lord. We thank you tonight. We bless you. We praise you. We glorify you. And Lord, please give us healing for this coronavirus. We thank you, God, that we can call on you in time of despair. We can call on you when things are down, Lord. We can call on you when we have no other way out, Lord. We can look to you, which will always show us an exit. So we thank you. We bless you. We edify you. We glorify you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 God bless all of you.
And just a quick public service announcement. Please note that the Enough is Enough campaign will have a community conversation with our young people on Wednesday at 6:30. Wednesday, that's this Wednesday at 6:30, and that is our millennials speaking to us. So we definitely want to hear from them as well. So please participate.
Madam President, our intention to create a strategic plan, working together. Can you speak a word on that, or where do we go from here?
Absolutely. And so, as you know, the strategic plan in regards to the NAACP honestly is going to be focused on a platform of collaboration. I am in collaboration and community-driven collaboration, seeking to rebuild, rebirth, and ensure that we, not just the NAACP, but the community at large, is truly a force where we live. Ensuring that we are all at the table and able to speak for our community as one.
Thank you. Great job, Madam President.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone. God bless you all.
Good night. God bless you.
Take care.
Good night.
All right, God bless you.